they have passed on advanced knowledge and added to it in their own research in the underground bases and the secret projects around the world, while at the same time creating a society in which people are kept in ignorance of even basic knowledge, never mind advanced knowledge. And they use this to manipulate people, not just mentally and emotionally, though that's the fundamental bottom line of the whole thing, but also physically. I came across, to give you an example of this, I came across a story in Britain a couple of weeks ago now, and it was about two professors, academics with big, long histories of research into drugs' effects on the body and cancer research. And they came up with some things that really showed how detailed and deep this goes in terms of the attack on the human being in terms of mind, body, and emotions. Cancer treatment today is the equivalent of a Stone Age man with a club. You know, you want to cure a headache, well, smack the guy on the head and make him senseless, no headache, because chemotherapy doesn't kill cancer cells, only it kills cells. And the idea is, at this so-called cutting edge of human medical knowledge, is are we going to kill enough healthy cells before we kill enough cancer cells so the patient dies anyway? So what they've been trying to do, some researchers anyway, is find something they can put into cancer cells which allows the drug only to affect cancer cells and not the healthy cells. But what these two professors have found between them is that already the human body has that naturally. What they found is that in cancer cells is an enzyme which they've called CYP1B1, and it's only in cancer cells. They've also found that in fruit and vegetables of certain kinds, quite a lot, those that are subject to fungal attack, they produce something called salvestrols. And what the salvestrols do when you eat the fruit and vegetables is that they interact with this enzyme, CYP1B1, and that turns these salvestrols in fruit and vegetables into a cancer-killing agent. And because the CYP1B1 is only in cancer cells, it only affects cancer cells. The salvestrols don't affect healthy cells at all. So the natural, and this is a fundamental part of the human immune system that has only just become known. When we were eating fruit and vegetables regularly, and not ones subject to chemicals and fungicides, we were being protected from cancer all the time, because when a cancer cell appeared, it had the CYP1B1. It interacted with the salvestrols, turned it into a cancer-killing agent, goodbye cancer cell. The reason we've had this explosion of cancer in the world, this epidemic, was because they brought in, and again, in the shadows, where they really understand how this works, they've done it coldly and calculatedly, they brought in chemical farming all over the world, and it's had this effect. One, because they put fungicides on the fruit and vegetables now, that kills the fungus, and so the fruit and vegetables no longer are stimulated to produce these salvestrols. So that's cut it off on one sense. But they've also found in their research that the most used fungicides in the world, produced by these this cabal of biotech corporations, especially Monsanto, the most used fungicides have another effect. They neutralize and block CYP1B1 enzyme in cancer cells. So they hit the defense mechanism naturally against cancer in the body on both angles. And after 20 years of researching this, Max, there is absolutely no way that is a coincidence. That's been knowingly done. And what it's caused is an explosion of cancer in the world that wasn't there before. And like I say, I just tell that story just as an example of how those in the shadows are working with a knowledge that is overwhelmingly not known even among the academia within the mainstream society. And thus we are being manipulated in ways that we don't even realize, because we don't understand the knowledge that they have.
Yeah, and companies like Monsanto definitely come to mind, and Codex Alimentarius. I think Codex Alimentarius is one of the biggest threats that humanity is facing, actually, personally, from my research.
Well, Codex Alimentarius fundamentally connects into what I've just said, because
exactly.
that comes from the angle of preventing us having the adequate doses and availability of food supplements, etc., to overcome the fact that our food is now not producing the nutrients that it normally did, and to bridge that gap, people are taking more and more food supplements. So Codex Alimentarius is designed to hijack that market and stop it being in any way effective in terms of bridging the gap. And the other thing they're doing, and this is happening in America now with some legislation that's going through, they're actually attacking and targeting organic farming and insisting on rules and regulations that basically will put organic farmers out of business. And that's because, again, connected to what I've just said, you can still get very significant salvestrol input to the body through organic fruit and vegetables. 30% higher in organic than you'll find in the chemical stuff. And so they're hitting us from that angle alone as well. And it's all part of the goal of reducing the global population very, very significantly, which is one of their agendas.
Oh, absolutely. I actually did a show about that a couple of weeks ago, Bill HR 875. I think alarm bells should be going off in people's heads with this, especially when at the same time we have the First Lady doing a groundbreaking at the White House, putting in the White House garden, where of course they're going to be growing organic food for the people in the White House.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how they're not seeing this. I mean, little bells should be going off in the head with that one. Plus, we've got the seed vaults that they're constructing all around the world, which they say, it's a doomsday vault to protect us from any major catastrophe. Well, I would suggest to people that it's actually being done to keep the good seeds out of the hands of the people and feed us genetically modified food.
That's exactly right. The Monsanto, and particularly, I mean, that's the name that just keeps coming up. It's famous for Agent Orange and many other horrific productions that they've come up with. That is such a controlled, I don't use this word very often because it has too many connotations that is overused, but it's evil. If you take the word evil, it's the opposite of live, it's the reverse of live. Well, that's what Monsanto is. And of course, what people need to understand about GM, genetically modified food situation, is that DNA affects DNA. And genetically modified food can genetically modify us, and that's the idea.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the tests they've done on these things, I mean, there is virtually no standards. I mean, anything that you do to food, if you add anything to it, change it in any way, then it's got to be labelled as a food additive. They go in and they change this stuff on a DNA level, change the actual DNA of the food, and it just produces whatever, and there's no guidelines at all. And they say, well, it's a similar protein to the one we're eating, so we'll just go with that, you know. But it's very, very dangerous.
Yeah, the thing is that because of this pyramid structure that they've come up with, both for society in general and individual organizations, you've got the people lower down who are physically producing this stuff, if you like, who are completely unaware of what they're actually doing. You know, they're probably feeding their own families GM food and telling them it's safe because the expert at Monsanto told me today. But as you go up the pyramid to the people who are really in the know, they are coldly, calculatedly attacking the human entity mentally, emotionally, and physically. And GM food is in so many ways the jewel in their crown of this attack on the human being. Of course, there's also the electromagnetic attacks that they're subjecting us to now. I mean, even in British newspapers in the last 6 months or so, there's been a number of articles questioning the safety of what they call the electromagnetic smog that we're living amongst now, as all these electromagnetic sources and microwave sources, fill the atmosphere that we're living in. And when you think that the human body is an electrochemical organism, and it depends for its health on a electrochemical balance that it's natural to its optimum health, any chemical or electromagnetic electrical disruption to that balance is going to manifest itself as dis-ease, disharmony, and therefore illness. And so that's why, again, from the point of view of the shadow people who are doing this in full knowledge, is why we are being subjected to these electrochemical attacks to disrupt the human entity.